So tonight is the third episode of our resilience, and to put it back in context, just in case some of you joined for the first time tonight, uh, originally it's a piece of 19 minutes which I composed, on which Aegis has created a film, and subsequently musicians, actor, dance writer have chosen one portion of which they have made their creation. And tonight is Roberto Alvarez, flautist, who made this creation, and that was thus premiere tonight. The different soloists, they have no idea. Every week the film is different, so every Thursday for each of them, it's like some. It's not some sort. It is a surprise. Now, what sort of surprise? Well, Roberto, I'm listening. I've seen it before tonight, but as an avant-premiere, but not you. So, what do you think? How do you?
Okay, last week I was talking about that I was not very concerned or very worried, but I was wondering what would be the point of view, because always when I play, if I have some image, it's always very abstract. So when making images related to music and trying to tell a story on top of that, I think that's very challenging. But I thought it was great. I mean, I really liked it, and I thought there were, especially I remember there was this effect that I liked very much, the lightning when I was doing this tongue rum with this effect with air, and each time there was this white light appearing. I thought that was actually something very similar that I had in mind. So that was I was very glad that even not talking, we agreed on that idea. And yeah, I mean, I really liked it. I found some material from the previous movies, from the other 2 weeks, like the kaleidoscopical, when the camera went focusing to the score, there was this thing that related to the virus, right? So I was very surprised to see this element again. I had no idea. I didn't know what to expect. If it would be very related to the other videos, if it would be very unrelated. But I see there is a theme going through the videos. So it's very nicely done. So thank
I
you very
wonder,
much, teachers and Dipesh. And thank you,
I
Robert.
wonder if it's something for musicians. I share this impression with you that when I form a visual idea of music, is also all most of the time it's abstract,
Mhm.
and I don't know why. I don't know why. So, yeah. But then when I see something figurative, it doesn't shock me. Like tonight, nothing shocked me. Shocking, by shocking mean disturbed. Nothing disturbed me. On the contrary.
No, I thought it was very well done together with the music. So it was very nice. I will watch it again.
And share it with all your friends and colleagues. Teachers, is there I wouldn't say a subplot, but a metaphor of the a flute is what we call an aerophone. So it's a column of air that is put in vibration with the although the flute is not a reed, but the idea of reed, a tube in which there is air. Like last week with the percussion, it seemed to be water, and tonight it seemed to be air. Is
I
that?
mean, of course, it's intentional, and I know that it's quite obvious. But at the same time, the way we're trying to do it is in a non-obvious visual way. So the
Sure.
metaphor, of course, is quite obvious, but I think the approach is perhaps still less than obvious with the different fades and overlays and those kind of things. So obviously, as non-musicians, sometimes the first thing that comes to our mind will be the more obvious interpretation, but then visually we want to try to take it to unusual way. And by the end of it, things will get less obvious as they go along. So we're trying to like prepare the audience for more and more crazy things by the end of it.
But it was by no means a criticism. You know, it's the same as a composer. You create an expectation and then you contradicted the expectation, and from there comes, you hope to keep the interest of the listener. If it's too, if the information that the listener receives, it can never sort of make some sort of sense, that's when people say that they don't understand the music. That's when they say they don't like. That's when they reject. If obviously, if it's formula based, that's my sense. If it's too formula based and at first listening, you already know what's coming, then it becomes what we say monotonous. But so we in composition also sometimes we state something obvious. Clear and straightforward. So by no means that was a criticism.
No, I'm not worried. And Deepesh?
So I mean, to the point that where it seems like wind, water. It's the first video was so abstract and was very different compared to the music. So these videos are like in contrast to the first video, and these videos will be in contrast to the last video. We don't want to give similar experiences throughout the week. We want them to have a different experience. And also to what Roberto mentioned about the light, when I listened to the music and I heard that portion of the song, I imagined the sun shining brightly on me. So the music spoke to the reason Tejas and I took the wind, or we played with the light, is because that's what, this might sound as cliche, but that's what the music told us. It wasn't oh, this might be a cool idea. It was like we do what the music tells us, and we don't want to be either too pretentious or too simple. We want to find that right balance and respect the music and the artist as well. So that's our whole process. And right now we're working with the next video as well. And like they just mentioned, we're actually slowly getting more and more. We're moving away from straightforward concepts. So when you see the next few videos, you'll be like, okay, we're almost going to back where we started from. We started abstract, we went simple with the water and the wind, and then we take a journey back to the abstract.
I see we have among our e-guests Gao Yang. Hello, Gao Yang from Pavan Studio. Gao Yang, I worked for many years with Gao Yang. He's a good friend. And Gao Yang also had an important part in this project, is that I come with my MIDI score, and it's Gao Yang who improves the sounds. And then I sit down with Gao Yang and we start to I compare this, I don't know how you say this in English, when the ceramic and you have the earth and it turns, how do you call that, John? When you make pottery. And
what?
I can't read.
It's the potter's wheel. The potter's wheel.
And then with Gao Yang, we start to mold these sounds. To me, it's always is very powerful. This creative process is like a potter's wheel. It changes that we work as we keep going. So Gao Yang also has not yet seen any of the images, the visuals. Gao Yang, can you share an idea or an impression or an emotion from what you saw tonight?
Okay, I have sound?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I just saw I saw the percussion one and the flute one. It's very nicely done. The sound is good, and the
good. Thank you, because otherwise I'm in trouble.
Oh yeah. I mean, yes, I think it's very interesting for me to be part of it. It's also.
because Gao Yang shared once a very interesting thought with me. Gao Yang explained to me that the software to edit sound and the microphones, they are just getting more and more complex, and they can do more and more unbelievable things. Uh, just one thought, one day I had a piano piece, a MIDI piece, and then I could choose, do I want to, it's to sound like a Bösendorfer, like a Steinway, like I had, Gao Yang gave me their 10 grand pianos, and it did really sound different. So, okay, all this is possible. But on the other hand, Gao Yang explained to me that people are more listening more and more on devices that have poor sounds. Start with YouTube and the handphones. So somewhere, where is the recording and editing world going if you are working so hard to create something, and then in the end, how people consume, I hate the word, the music is becoming poorer and poorer, isn't it, Gao Yang?
Yeah, in some way is. So for example, last week I asked around 16 students what, I mean, they are major in music, either they are music teacher or instrument students. So I asked them, what are they listen to? Do you have a speaker at home? Because they want to learn recording. So, but I think only one guy show hands, he have speaker. So that's me, another 15 of them all using earpiece. And for the guys, I think so far the best hi-fi system, if they have a car, that is the best. But when they're driving, you can imagine that's the best sound system they have, but they're on the road.
So you are saying that it must affect the quality of their hearing. I mean, the critical sense.
Yes, I mean the it's true. This for last decade, this has changed a lot. I mean, today's, I think 95% of young people, they will listen to the earbuds.
Okay.
But I mean, can be sound decent, but everything adds up from this streaming, the MP3. It's hard to say it's really worse than before. If you compare to 30 years, 40 years ago, if you have a Walkman, you're running cassette. And today, if you have a decent streaming service, you listen to a high rate MP3, I think the sound quality is okay. It's not bad. Okay. But I think today's another problem for the young generation is too many things to listen to. So how to choose a good performance of a masterpiece, or how to choose a good music, that is a challenge.
Okay. And teachers, Deepish, most of what proportion of what you filmed is actually done with professional equipment, and what proportion is done with an iPhone? But an iPhone is also a very, very sophisticated piece of equipment. Talk to
well,
us.
first of all, we don't use iPhones, so I'll say that I don't use any Apple products at all.
Okay, okay,
and
sorry,
I want to stress that very strongly.
Okay, okay.
But I would say, I mean, the quality of phones is at a professional level now. That's something that I want to stress. If you have the latest state-of-the-art phone and you know how to use it, then I would say it is a professional piece of equipment. In all of these videos, I don't know, every video is different, but definitely there is always some phone footage in there and other stuff filmed on a camera. I will also say, I'll just say this honestly, because I want to demystify the idea of filmmaking, but even the cameras that we use are not the $3,000 or $4,000 cameras. We both happen to use Sony cameras, mirrorless ones, but the mid-range ones that are in the $1,000 level. Because the way I teach at university and when I go to high schools, my whole point is that nowadays, with the resources available, people should feel that they don't have to spend tens of thousands of dollars in order to create good quality film. And what we always focus on is the creativity of the output. Obviously, like if you're making an IMAX film and you have a 10-minute unbroken shot of the sunrise and there's nothing else going on in the shot other than the sunrise, then you have to use an IMAX camera. But our films have a lot of edits, a lot of overlays, a lot of effects, a lot of things that we're trying to do to make the film visually creative. And so the biggest perception that we have is that it's not about the equipment, it's about what you do with the work afterwards. So in fact, the quality differential is such that it's hard for us to tell the difference once we finish editing. It's not always obvious which was done on the phone, which was done on the camera. So it's definitely almost, if it's not 50-50, it's always in that range as far as I can tell. And because we use Sony phones and Sony cameras, they look more similar, I would say. Deepesh?
What you say for image, I think is also valid for audio equipment and audio processors and instruments. Yes.
It's similar to what Gao Yang said about how music is consumed. Even film is being consumed on smartphones and computers. The only way you could, for example, if we did this project with a 35mm film camera, the only way you could tell the difference is if you watch this on a projected screen. And since no one is watching this on a projected screen, it's okay for us to use smartphones or, and actually it's, the thing about smartphones and mirrorless cameras, or actually smartphones more, is every year it's getting better and better and better. And like whatever they just said about like the visuals and stuff, that's the same thing. But at the end of the day, it's if the story or the visuals aren't interesting, it doesn't matter what equipment you use. At the end, the buck stops at the visuals and the story. In this case, it's in this case, it's visuals. If you're doing a narrative film, it's the story. If those things are not good, it doesn't matter if you're using an IMAX camera or an iPhone, like an iPhone 5 years ago. So it doesn't matter. Yeah.
It's like you listen to a very old recording, mono, vinyl recording. You listen to what the Alfred Cortot played Chopin. So can not be sound nice, right? But the music is nice, so it's something like that.
Yeah.
Yes, Sabrina is with us tonight.
Good evening, Gao Yang. Hi, nice to see you, John. It's a pleasure to see you regularly every Thursday. Thank you very much. I have a question for Roberto, because finally this evening, you have selected your section, your 5 minutes or 6 minutes plus out of the 20 minutes of the original composition. What was the trigger point? What got you started? An idea, a sound, both? Or you started like, I started from blank and then an idea came? I am very interested to understand what is the process from the composing point of view, because for me it was a first, so I want to hear from those who have more experience.
In my case, what I liked from the segment, well, Robert told us to choose around 5 minutes, right? And there was some parts were selected already. So before I began listening, I knew some parts I couldn't touch. So what I liked from this part was that there was two big chunks of silence or almost silence where I could develop some ideas, but there was a lot of material in the middle part. So I liked that there was a lot of contrast So then I think for the impro, it gives you a lot of information, and that's very, very useful. And I liked to use the two parts of silence to go from one part of the story to the other one. And I thought that would give me more possibilities at the time to play. So it was just that.
Thank you. Nice, interesting. Thank you.
But do you still have your score to show us a little bit your drawing, your idea developed from not with you?
I don't think I have it.
Wait a second.
I remember it was not even a score. It was some
Yes.
simple notes.
Yes, that's right. I think it's very interesting.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So these parts. Okay. What I did was I wrote some ideas. I wrote it bar by bar. So it looks like it is a long score, but that's not at all what I played. It was just different ideas. I would jump from one bar to another bar to maybe then create something new. So it was only to have something where to begin. I knew for sure how I would begin, how I would end, and there were a few places that I wanted to go very much with Robert's soundtrack. So there were a few places that I knew what I would do precisely. All the parts in the middle, I knew if I would use a pentatonic scale or a hexatonic scale, but it was more or less more improvised on the spot. There was one part where there were two parts, very, very difficult. I was trying to figure out how to make it live with the soundtrack. One was this bending note that appears in the score, and I wanted to use that as an introduction to the recording. I don't know if you know what I mean. I was improvising, then bending one note, and then the soundtrack begins. It's not the most sophisticated way to do it, but what I wrote down was, okay, I have to bend this note after 25 seconds. So I had a timer, and after 24 seconds, I said, okay, begin to bend the note. And I was going like this to blend with the recording. The same thing happened a couple of times, but both the timer and the score were just guidelines. So there were only 2 or 3 places where I knew exactly this has to be in this moment. I think in the video you can see easily. Actually, something happens with the image at the same time. I was very curious. For example, at this explosion that happens in the middle part, I was very curious to see what would happen in the image. For this part, I think sonically it was very clear. I didn't have any image at all, so there was no expectation. So it was very interesting to see the result. And actually, at the same time, I have also a question to teachers and Deepesh. When you work on this piece, did you have these ideas before you began? Before you listened to the soloists, when you began working with the original, with the soundtrack by Robert? Was it after listening to the soloists? Because you are the only people that, you and Robert, of course, that listen to every soloist, right? For example, last week we were talking about were we really free while improvising? And I said, well, we have Robert piece, so that's something. It's not total freedom. We have something that we will use. Was it the same case for you, or were you not? I don't know. Were you inspired by the players? It was not so related. I think I know some parts they were inspired by the players.
I mean, in terms of the process, I would say, of course, we know the title of the piece. We got to hear Robert's music well in advance. So some elements we already were able to come up with some ideas. And of course, just through collaborative discussion, we discussed those ideas with Robert. I'll give you one example, because I cannot say too many things, otherwise we'll give away what's coming up. But as an example, we agreed very, very early on that the first video will not feature any clips of any of the performers, because we don't want to give any clues to even what music is coming up. Of course, the first video doesn't have the improvisations, but we could have shown videos of you preparing or just listening to the music or something like that, but we didn't want to do that. So that's one example of something that Robert was very on board with, and that was planned ahead of time. Then in terms of the overall visual motifs, nature versus the city is one that I think is starting to become clear. So in the first video, there's a lot of nature, there's a lot of the city, but they don't really come together yet. So yeah, without revealing everything, I will say that was some of the stuff. Definitely, we immediately decided in which way we're going to introduce the musicians and some overall themes of what resilience means as a word, what it means in relation to Singapore, what it means in relation to COVID. And of course, when it comes to art, the idea of human civilization versus nature, those kind of things. Then some of the more detailed stuff, then Deepesh can answer.
Yeah, so when we first heard Resilience, the first track, so that kind of gave us the, okay, now we know what all the 8 videos are supposed to be. So we extract the common theme from that. But for each individual artist, for me, I think Playtesh as well, it started when we were recording you guys in the studio. So the way we function is, when we record, we look for good footage, but we also record with the final product in the mind. So how will this shot fit in with the rest of the film? Like if I get an angle of you playing the flute, how will I be able to use this, right? So as we keep asking those questions, it's more subconscious than conscious. So we'll keep asking these questions, and as we hear you play and as we see you move with the music, we get visuals. So when I was seeing Dennis play the drums, I was thinking about these hard cropped images moving around, and I thought of water spiraling out of control. So that for me, the images actually come on the day we shot. But for those images to get actually actualized and like formed in the end, that's the whole editing process. And until Tejas and I, we finish and we finalize, I wouldn't say we are like always absolutely sure what we're going to do. It's almost like, for example, for this video, right? I can give you a good example. So I had an idea, and then I'll tell the idea to Tejas, and then Tejas will take the idea and he'll extrapolate it even further. So there's this almost like, do you know that game in the Winter Olympics when they throw the the stone? What is it called, Tejas? Do you know?
Curling. It's called curling.
Yeah. So in my opinion, it's Robert and the artist. You guys throw the stone. The Tejas and I, we are sweeping to make sure the stone reaches the end. Yeah. So it's almost this kind of, we see where it wants to go and we want to make sure it goes there. So that's the kind of thing that we feel. And we'll never know until the video is done. Like there are some filmmakers who from the beginning know exactly what they want, right? Like it's in their brain. But for a project like this, we like to keep it kind of, we want to surprise ourselves, if that makes sense. So that's the process that we go through. Yeah.
The image of curling is a very nice one. Roberto, what you just described is actually how composers work. We don't necessarily, and I'm about to ask John, we don't necessarily compose a piece chronologically. We may, for sure, I don't know why, know how the piece is going to start, or we know how it's going to end. And then we work, and then gradually we piece and then take big decisions, and it's always macro, micro, macro, micro. John, I'm always eager to hear John. Hello, John.
Hello, everybody. Congratulations. I loved it. And Roberto, to you. Marvelous. It was really enjoyable. I've got about 4 or 5 points I'd like to go through. And one, my experience right now has been very interesting because I am intentionally pacing it out so that I am only experiencing it a week apart. So I'm playing with the memory, the space of a week and what that space creates. I'm interested in the space between the performances as much as I am interested in the performance itself. And what I sensed from the first one, it seemed to be from afar, from a distance, from the clouds, or from outer space, and looking at the earth or looking at something very general. Any one of these players could have been the pedestrians on the streets or in a bus or something in the first video. So we feel this is kind of the bigger picture, but then it seems to ask the question, who are these people? And perhaps even an existential question, you know, of what it is to be human. And that reminds me of a wonderful passage from the Upanishads, which is, who can understand a veena without understanding the veena player? Who can understand a drum without understanding the drummer themselves? And it goes on to talk about that these are all as vapors that rise to the supreme. It's an extraordinary passage. And so consequently, it feels like portraits then. The second and the third episode, Roberto, it felt like a portrait of you or this person. And consequently, everything I see and hear is completely metaphorical then. I see the wheat. And by the way, I love the imagery of the wheat and Roberto's head moving. You know, you're playing and your head has a natural swing, and that seemed to be a dance. And this might be a slight bit sidetracking, but I'm very interested in, for example, the consciousness of plants, or the consciousness of all things. And Monica Gagliano is a biologist who has done extraordinary work in plant consciousness. So to capture those two together in a kind of a dance, I thought was very, very beautiful. Robert, I wanted to ask you something too that reminds me of something like Pavlov's dog, you know, these psychological responses. You have this bell, reoccurring bell in all of them, which also reminds me of Indian temple, these bells that are marking the various prayer and puja times. But I almost feel like I am programmed to respond to it. The way I am to a doorbell, you know, if the doorbell rings, we have an automatic response to these things. And this bell feels like I want to respond to it. And I don't know really what it is I want to respond to. So could you talk a little bit about the implanting of that bell reoccurrence?
That one is totally mathematical. There is no so I like to play with palindromes, and then I put the bell right in the middle, and then it fans and it opens.
So it's a marker.
Yes, it's
but what are they marking?
It's like, you know, colotomic. I learned this in the gamelan. These are sounds that are structural marker, and yes, and then the loops, and it's something I've learned in the studying. I'm not an ethnomusicologist, but I did study a lot of gamelan music, and at the time my PhD was on gamelan, and since then it's sort of it crept, or it's still present in a lot of my works. I actually okay, when I compose, I will have some ideas, but pretty soon I really need to have a structure. And then I spend quite a bit of time to put together a structure. And when I'm happy with the structure, then I start to compose, and I put the things left and right. And then it takes a lot of thinking if at one point I would change that structure. It has happened. So So then in this particular piece, it's also something on the verge of starting to be annoying. This and then it expands, then the contrary of expanding, and that's this image of uncertainty of this. So I have a mode, I have two modes in this piece, and then I have all these foreign notes which creep in, develop, which make certain people feel that the piece is atonal. The piece is not atonal, but at one point, if you have so many foreign notes, a foreign note, for those who are not a musician or composer, is a note that doesn't belong to the mode, so which can be perceived as a dissonance. At one point, I don't know how many percent, if you have more foreign notes than notes belonging, well, then you lose a sense. You are disoriented, and you lose a sense of where you are, and it becomes very unsettling. And which is a feeling I, like everybody, I had during the lockdown in this crisis, in this COVID crisis.
I think,
Sorry, just to answer your question, because I didn't really ask myself rationally what is this bell, but I felt it as a sort of there is a reminder, there is something urgent, urgent, urgent. And maybe for me, it's the passing of the time. How long are we going to stay in these pandemics? How long have you been in lockdown, circuit break? How long does it take? How long will it take? When we started, we had no idea, and we still have no idea, actually. So, and there is an urgency, because for me, it's something that is bothering. I can't move, I can't travel. It's something like, okay, when is gonna be over? When is gonna be lifted? When can I fly? So yes, for me, it's a sort of, okay, it's like yeah, it's a sort of a thought continuous that is in the back of your mind, and you think, or you try to get away from it, but it's a reminder that, yeah, I'm still here, time is passing.
This is the best for a composer. You write something, and it opens mentally different associations for different people. This is the best. I love that.
if I may continue some, I think the theme of alienation seems to definitely be there.
Yes.
And you know, I felt in the portrait of Roberto, which, you know, this player, there was an image of the piano, the grand piano, with nobody sitting at it, and that felt lonely. You know, here's Roberto. I mean, you could have chosen not to have this image of the piano. And I think, was there also a synthesizer or something was in the background? But we see this piano, and it's open. The lid is open. It's ready to play. The piano bench is there. It's ready to play. There's nobody to play it. And I thought that was very telling then, that particular place. I also felt that in the end, the persona, shall we say the persona, the character, seemed to be subsumed by the image and the sound and actually disappeared. And then we had this kind of imaging of the hexagon with its expansion. And you couldn't help but ask, well, where is the player now? What happened? Did they just stop? Or are they subsumed by this? Where did they go? So I thought that was a very interesting kind of twist.
Okay.
Talking about the whole alienation thing, that's a absolutely intentional thing from like day one. The first video has there are very few people, like there is no people in that video, and I felt that through the first track that Robert made. Like there's something about the music where it this is not like a criticism, or I don't know what to say, but there's something I wanted to say that it feels in and of itself. It doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like, when I hear it, I feel like this isn't made by a human or something like that. You know what I mean? Like it feels like it exists. It is the piece of music. It just exists. So when we're making the video, we want to make a video of things that exist, not things that grow or live or things that are alive and like change, but like things that exist. So that's why during the silences in the first video, I show things that grow and things that change. We show nature and we show cities. But everything apart from that, I've shown sculptures, I've shown infrastructure, I've shown cities. Those are all things that exist. If you remove humans, those things will exist. They'll just stay there. So that's the whole thing. And and when you mentioned about how Roberto, his head was swaying with the plants, that's that's like what I was mentioning about, like it's this subconscious communication between the artist and the filmmakers. uh, uh, I wouldn't say it's intentional. That would be praising me too much, praising us too much. But it just fits. It just comes in our head. We see Roberto move, and we're like, okay, something. We have to find an image that fits that. So that's the thing.
It's
But
certainly an organic process rather than fully intentional, but it's organic based on, because one thing I would say, number one, from our limited understanding of music, but it does seem very much like the piece by Robert is very intentionally created so that things can be added to it. So it feels like, in that sense, we're trying to do the same thing with the video, that we're adding more and more things as the video goes on. That's why the first video doesn't have people, because it feels like it was written that way as well. Like this music is written so other people are going to add something to it. So therefore, in the first video, we don't want to have a lot of people because those people are still coming. And then, of course, the other organic part, it seems like I don't know if this was intentional or not, but all the performers had a very specific way of performing. They were all different. They were all different, but all very performative in their own way. Like it definitely would have been harder if everybody who performed was a very static kind of performer who likes to sit very still and doesn't like to move around and doesn't have their own personality. But I would say that every instrument and every performer of every instrument seemed to have a very clear and very different personality that gave us some organic things to work with. But certainly that idea of like emptiness that then becomes full, that came from the music as well.
Just I violently disagree that you have a limited understanding of music. I violently disagree, because there is all what you have created so far, that there is not one moment. We remember for the first video, I very diplomatically, because this is may become sensitive, suggested that you move one image 1 second early and another, and that was all on 19 minutes. All the rest, yes, yes, oh yes. So you do not say you have a limited understanding of music.
I mean, I guess that's true because Deepesh would agree with this. Music is actually 50% of what makes a film good, in my opinion. Filmmakers who focus too much on the visuals, like 80 or 90%, and only 10% on the music, are really letting down their audience. So to some extent, we have to force ourselves to have some kind of, I would just say the knowledge is organic. Because we do, like Deepesh especially encouraged me, like both of us, by working together, we've become much more focused on the sound as well as the visuals, just from the mistakes that we made early on in our filmmaking.
it's absolutely true about the whole sound thing, because it's when people watch a film, right? And if they see a mistake visually, they can find it out and they can be like, okay, that's a mistake. That cut was wrong, or wait, that thing shouldn't be there. But when it's sonic, it's a sonical thing. They'll feel it. They won't be able to pinpoint, but they just know. It's this almost like it's a subconscious thing. Like if they feel that something's wrong, or through the sound, they will know it, and that's the thing. And another thing that I want to mention is one of the few projects where I actually enjoyed shooting all the artists, because it's it was a very since John mentioned Indian temples and bells, most of my life, I've only experienced live music through temples, and seeing recording them live was also very, very almost a religious experience, in the sense that there were moments where I'd stop shooting just to hear them play, and then they used to be like, "Hey, can you like go get the shot?" Like, okay. So some of the stuff I'll just get lost, because I've never been I've never been in a studio, and I've never been that close to musicians and seen them in their seeing them create. Because for filmmaking, when we're creating, we are in a room with a computer. It's a very single experience, to say the least. But with musicians, there's almost this, like, it's very nice. It's a different kind of beast altogether.
I also see that we have some colleagues or friends or people I don't know who are part, who have joined this chat. Please, if you feel like sharing something, these conversations are not at all organized. So please, if you would like to add something, please go ahead.
I'll try to remember at the beginning of next chat, but we should always remind people you can also text your questions if you don't feel like turning on your camera. Zoom has a chat function, so you can always just write your questions down.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Any preview of next week? Do we know who is coming next?
Yes, the next one is, sorry, you can say it.
It's Robert.
Next week.
It's the piano, right?
Yes. Next week is Bertram Wee. I wish all the best for Bertram, because tonight he wanted to join and he has a medical emergency, so he's recovering. So that's why he couldn't be with us tonight. But he told me he will be back on his feet for next week. So next week is Bertram Wee, who is also a composer in his own right, and an excellent composer. And I see that John is nodding. So John, you know then his work. And Bertram was the pianist in this journey. If anything else, then we call it a night. Congratulations, Roberto. Thank you, Tejas. Thank you, Deepish. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for joining us.
And thank you, the National Arts Council, for making this production possible.
See you next week.
So,
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.